Hello and welcome to everybody who is tuning in to the Beats Research Radio podcast today. We are a podcast and YouTube channel that is dedicated to making the current advances in science and research accessible to the community. My name is Ryan, and I am an undergraduate student at the Translational and Molecular Medicine program in the University of Ottawa, and I'll be your host for today's episode. Joining us today is Dr. Erin Mulvihill. Dr. Mulvihill is an associate professor in the Department of Biochemistry, Microbiology, and Immunology at the University of Ottawa. She is also the director and principal investigator at the Energy Substrate Metabolism Research Laboratory in the University of Ottawa Heart Institute. Part of Dr. Mulvihill's research focuses on lipids, commonly known as fats, and hormones and their effect on diabetes. Since Dr. Mulvihill joined the Heart Institute in 2017, she has received many prestigious awards, such as the Heart and Stroke National New Investigator Award, the Institute of Nutrition, Metabolism, and Diabetes Young Scientist Award from the Canadian Institutes of Health Research, and also the Heart Institute's very own Investigator of the Year Award. We are honored to be joined by her today.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's a pleasure. Your research on diabetes often involves modeling this disease. Could you explain what it means to create a diabetes model and how they are made and why they're so important to really study this disease?
Thanks, Ryan, for this great question. My lab is interested in understanding why living with diabetes increases your risk of cardiovascular disease. And we know that diabetes is diagnosed by having high levels of blood sugar. And we know that it's managed by keeping these blood sugar levels within a very tight range. However, we also know that this isn't the only factor that increases cardiovascular risk because some medications that just lower blood glucose don't actually improve risk of cardiovascular disease. So when we're studying this in the lab, we need to make sure we're not only modeling the high levels of blood sugar, but we're also considering other things that may be different, including the concentration of cholesterol and triglycerides within the blood and other factors which may also contribute to disease. How these models are made is we have a lot of genetic tools, so we can make and modify cells very specifically so that they can turn on with specific colors. We can also use a lot of things that are in our environment. So if we want to look at the risks of smoking, we can model that. We can also look at high-fat diets, and we can very specifically even tune the ingredients of all the diets so that we can really understand how a lot of our environmental exposures as well as our genetics contribute to cardiovascular risk.
Thank you for that response. It's really interesting to think about how we're able to see what happens in humans when there is diabetes versus, let's say, a cell line or maybe even like a rat or another animal. Is it really similar in terms of how their metabolism works to humans?
Yeah, in fact, a lot of discoveries that have been made that have had an impact on human health, we see that they're conserved all the way across, a wide range of species. So I know many of our listeners have probably heard of the GLP-1 receptor agonists who, now up to 10% of adults are taking these medications. And, these are based on hormones that are found across all species, including lizards. So when the biology is conserved, we're really able to use a variety of models to ensure that what we think is happening is really happening and that we can feel confident to take these sorts of medicines all the way to the clinic.
You mentioned that hormones and lipids, so hormones like GLP-1, they play a role not only in diabetes, but they could also be possibly targets for controlling it. Could you tell us a little bit about how your research explores these roles?
Yeah, so this is a form of regulation that exists as we said, in many species that really links our food intake with how our body can utilize that energy. And so, one of the first things that was discovered about glucagon-like peptides, or GLP-1, is that they're released after a meal. And they can actually signal to the beta cells within the pancreas that produce insulin to produce enough insulin to cover what we've just eaten. And then through decades of research by many labs across the globe, it was actually also discovered that these hormones also can slow how our food is progressing through the gastrointestinal tract and also can signal to us to stop eating. And so that led to the development of these drugs for obesity and the management of excess body weight, which has been really exciting.
That's so cool. It's interesting to see that we've taken something natural and we're able to use it in pharmaceuticals, in drugs, to develop something that is able to help us with managing our weight. Uh, do you see any downsides to possibly using these drugs?
I think that there has been overwhelming benefit. I mean, this has historically been a very difficult thing to achieve, where when people struggle with being overweight, having an option that will help them significantly reduce their body weight. Right now, there's a lot of trials in how we can combine lifestyle with these drugs. So, is there a specific exercise program that, when combined with these drugs that limit food intake, can lead to, better outcomes? Because ultimately, we want people aging as healthy and strong as possible. And so, I think given what we've learned about how beneficial lifestyle modifications are, but how having lifestyle modifications incorporated into your routine that actually brings success in weight loss. We can now take the pharmaceutical agents like GLP-1 and combine them with all the lifestyle modifications and get the benefits of both.
Wow, okay. So it's good to see that we have something that can supplement the lifestyle modifications, especially in today's society where we have a lot of foods that may be processed or that those are the types of things that are available to us in our environment now. So just see all of that incorporated and then just see something that could possibly help those people who do have obesity and who are looking to lose some weight. It is something that's really important in today's society. And talking about obesity, and also since your lab is situated at the Heart Institute, I do have to ask, how are diabetes and cardiovascular disease, so heart disease, how are they connected? And can you explain how the disease or its treatments can impact heart health?
Yeah, this is a great question, and it's certainly something we've learned a lot about in the past decade because we now have several medicines that actually were developed to improve the management of diabetes. So they were developed to help people control their blood sugars. But now what we've actually found is that not only can they help protect the heart of people who are living with diabetes, or in the case of the GLP-1 receptor agonist drugs, people who are living with obesity, we now have medicines that were developed for diabetes that can protect the heart of individuals who don't have diabetes. So this has been really exciting, especially in individuals who are living with cardiovascular disease like heart failure, where we didn't have a lot of options. These drugs have really emerged as a suitable option to improve symptoms and to improve heart function, which is really exciting because we didn't really necessarily understand how much these two diseases intersected. And so by managing now one, we've been able to uncover pathways, which then we may be able to further leverage and further, instead of reaching 75% of people, we'll be able to really improve the lives of everyone.
It's great to see that medicine today is expanding and really developing that sort of complexity. It's really complicated, and there's a lot of science that goes behind it. So it's affecting all the different things that come together, all the different diseases as well, and how we're able to not only treat one, but treat both of them at the same time with something like these types of drugs. Do you Are you able to go over sort of an overview of how these drugs work?
Yeah, so it's very interesting. We're still discovering actually some of their pathways. So as an example, for the GLP-1 receptor agonists, we know that they can act directly on the insulin-producing cells, the beta cells of the pancreas, to improve diabetes. We also know that they can act on the brain to reduce our hunger and reduce our food intake. And now we're also learning that they may reduce inflammation. And how much is, inflammation a root cause of some of the cardiovascular diseases that we see? And what's interesting is that we're seeing some of these effects before there is weight loss. So they seem to be independent. And so this is where we really are using a lot of our preclinical models to understand how exactly and what cells are being targeted by these drugs to mediate these effects, and then how much of that effect is offering protection. So that then, as we tease these things out, we can then develop drugs that push more on reducing inflammation. We can use that as a readout, or we can potentially stratify the individuals who come in to say, oh, your levels of inflammation are very high, but your lipid levels are stable. So we think you should have this treatment of drugs versus another individual who has, very high lipids, very high blood pressure, but perhaps very low inflammation.
Okay, yes. So it's the pipeline of drug discovery here, where we're able to find one thing, and then once we're able to figure out how that drug sort of works, then we can use that information to develop drugs that are more potent in certain different ways. And then through that, we also discover their side effects and their benefits and their risks. So that is super interesting, and I appreciate all the answers you've given today, Dr. Mulvihill. And that does bring us to the end of today's episode. So thank you so much, Dr. Mulvihill, again for joining us. Dr. Mulvihill is a scientist and professor at the University of Ottawa Heart Institute and University of Ottawa. Her research broadens our understanding of the molecular events which contribute to metabolic and cardiovascular disease. Thank you all to the Beats Radio listeners for tuning in as well. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our YouTube, X, and Instagram channels at Beats Research. On behalf of our team and our director, Dr. Emilio Alarcon, we hope to see you all in the next episode.